Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about logical reasoning and just understanding logical fallacy. Um, as part of our energy balancing work, when we discover a false belief, we kind of dig down to the thoughts and the beliefs under the surface in our subconscious. Um, where we have these beliefs that are false, but sometimes we can't reason ourselves out of it because we can't see what we can't see, right? Or society thinks that way all the time. And so, what do we have to rebuke that false belief and change it to be more in alignment with God's will? So what I found was sometimes we have friends that struggle with that reasoning part, and so they can do the clearing, but then they can't reason and get themselves out and make more positive choices and more empowered choices to commit to. So I feel like this is part of this, and I put this information in my new book about parenting. So the book is called A Textbook for Mothers in Zion, um, because it's just different skills that we just need to adopt. It's not that, some people are just smarter than others. I feel like everyone can get this if we are instructed to do so. If we are shown how to do it, we will get it. All of us have this God-given intelligence. So yeah, I feel like this is a really good thing to teach ourselves and then in turn teach our family, and it helps protect us against the lies of Satan and the world. Okay, and I'll give some examples. um, I was at work, and I just mentioned I used to live in Florida, and COVID wasn't that crazy, especially in our area, as what I was hearing everyone say in Australia and other places. I said I was really grateful for that. And then, we shared a little bit of details, and then people got defensive. And then I got accused of being having a problem with authority. Like, people who don't wear masks all the time have a problem with authority. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, ad hominem fallacy right there. And then I think to myself, well, you know what? We're walking on the beach. So I just feel like I'm not going to catch COVID from the fishes or the turtles, right? So I think it's okay to not have mask at that time, or when I'm driving by myself, that I'm using my God-given talents or intelligence to kind of reason a little bit and then work it out instead of just blindly following. Because I see the pattern of Satan. Like my parents, they go, "Oh, well, we're not allowed to gather. Oh, we're not allowed to speak. Oh, I've seen this before in communism because it was grand and glorious before when the communists came in and said, "We got took over our country, took back our country. Yay, the Chinese and the Japanese and the French and everyone's gone. Everyone's gone. Now we have our own sovereignty. Whoa." And everyone's like, "Yay, our country is our own." And then they're like so glorified, so amazing. Just tell us what to do. Just we'll do everything that you tell us to do. And they're like, come to my grandpa's um, town, and they're like, "Hey, everyone, we need you to help, develop this new area. Everyone, jump on board. If your name is on this list, jump on board, jump on the truck, right?" And, you know, my grandpa's name was called, and he's like, "Oh, no, that's not me." And they're like, "Well, what's your name?" He just lied really quickly. And then we had a guy whose name isn't on the list, and he was like, "Well, how about me? Let me go. I want to go too. I want to help." But Grandpa thought to himself, this doesn't make sense. Something doesn't make sense, right? And so he's like, "I don't lie. I don't even know how to lie properly, and I just lied just now." And then, he told us this story later, and the guy just didn't have his name on there, and he's like, "But I want to go." And they're like, "Yeah, just jump on." And they took a truck full of men from the town or from the village or whatever, and no one came back ever, and no one's heard of again. And then years later, we hear about these killing fields. They weren't developing new area because of this lovely romanticized government. So at the time, it sounds great, but you still got to use your God-given intelligence to reason a little bit, to feel your heart, feel the spirit, and work things out. And so that's going to happen all the time. And now Satan doesn't even have to hide. We have Satan.com, so .co, I mean, making clothes for babies, boy clothes for girl babies, and girl clothes, I mean, just they don't hide it anymore. On social media, people who have an affection for youth, in other words, pedophilia, right? That's just out there. But then you got to think a little bit. You got to reason a little bit and say, no, that's wrong. And then take a stand. So I feel like, hang on, our kids are exposed to this stuff. Maybe some of us who've studied the gospel, who've been practicing reasoning skills, have some, weapons or something to defend ourselves with, but our kids don't. And so we really have to intentionally and explicitly teach them these things. Otherwise, they're going to get sucked in. And they're sometimes it feels like, that the 10 virgins um, parable, these people are just good churchgoers, but half of them really don't get it, right? And so that's what we want to do. We want to really help people get it. So I'm going to share with you um, this is the chart that I have. There's 18 that I've identified, and there are more. There are more. Okay. But these are the 18. And then we'll just dig into a few, and then every week we'll just discover a few, so that mums and dads can stay firm and not be manipulated, by their kids and their fallacious arguments, right? And then we can teach them to rely on the spirit and the gospel. Okay, so we've got all of these. Let me scroll down. Can you guys see the screen? Yeah. So I have the fallacy, and then I have a simple explanation for it, and there's a logical takeaway, as in how do we logically reason, and then the gospel principle that kind of rebukes that fallacy. And we have a lot of that fallacy in the scriptures as well. So in my book, I have a section on I should show you. Yeah, so for example, this is the first one. I have an explanation. I have children's example, adults example, and then, what we need to do, just how do we logically, you know, get out of it. Then I have scriptures that back it up, principle, 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 right? Principle, and then examples. So I'll go through each one. So just to, help you see, and maybe, take some time, have a family gathering in our church. My church is called Family Home Evening. So, just meet with your family, discuss one thing at a time, and just reason with the children. They're really smart kids. All right. They will get it. All right. As you learn it, you can teach it. All right. So we'll go through the 18, and then we'll go through each one in detail. And we probably can get through just two today. But that's okay. We'll just go through it, and it's worth this investment of time. Okay, so it's ad hominem, right, which is attacking the person starting the argument. So like I said, I'm like, when I'm like, I don't know if I should wear a mask in the car when I'm driving by myself or when I'm at the beach, and then I get this attack, like people who don't wear masks have problems with authority. And I'm like, wow, like attacking the character, attacking the person's character. So they didn't say anything about your reasoning. So my reasoning was there's no one around, right? They didn't say that that's a bad thing. They couldn't. So they attacked me as a person, you see? So that is a logical fallacy because that's not logical, right? So we'll talk about those examples more of those examples later. So the logical takeaway is focus on the argument, not the person. And then you have this scripture, and we'll have other scriptures as well. Okay. So it's just focus on one thing at a time. And there's a quiz at the end. Um, all right. So listen to the actual argument and then take one point and reason each point. Okay. Reason each point. That's all. That's all we're asking. Okay. So anecdotal evidence. So what it is using one story to prove everything. Like I prayed and my prayer wasn't answered, therefore God doesn't exist. Stuff like that. Okay, doesn't make sense, because we just one story or one experience doesn't prove a whole rule. You haven't drawn on any evidence. You haven't, read gospel principles and taken time to reason and think through things through a little bit. Okay, so that is a logical fallacy. The appeal to authority, believing something because an authority said it. All right. So it could be, somebody important that you love. So this influencer said this and this about um, church or religion, even though they're not like or health. So this influencer is not necessarily a doctor or a health specialist, but they say something about this other health problem. It's not in their specialty, and they're saying stuff, and then you believe them anyways. It's like asking a butcher how to bake bread, and then going, oh, but my butcher said that I can't bake bread. I'm not supposed to bake bread, but bread is bad. And then you listen, kind of like that. Doesn't make sense, but people do that all the time. So check the source and the evidence. I mean, it seems like really obvious, but I'm telling you, and you already know too, you've got lots of friends that trust in TikTok University, right? Yeah, it's like, saw it on TikTok, saw a video on it, it must be true. Like anybody can make a video, right? Here's some scriptures. Appeal to emotions, using feelings instead of facts to persuade. Like, I will be happy if you do this for me, right? But then trying to replace that with logic. Okay. And any questions, any comments so far? I don't want to plow through.
This is great, Jade. This is awesome.
Yeah, I try to simplify it because in like legal textbook and jargon, I even get lost. I'm like, what is it trying to
Yeah.
say? Like, can you speak normal like language for people to understand? And so I kind of simplified it and so made it so that, if a child can understand this, I mean, we can all understand this. Okay, bandwagon. So jumping on the bandwagon. Okay. So believing something is true because many people believe it too. Yeah, so everybody is going to have a kidney replacement, if they kidney transplant, if your kidneys are not working, so they don't believe that it will heal, right? And you're like, oh, wait a minute, really? But the spirit tells me this, right? And so we don't have to go with the crowd. And that's what people say. Oh, it's a flu shot time. Let's get the flu shot. And one lady at church Sunday, she's like, "Oh, I just got a flu shot. Da da da. I'm so happy." And I said, "Oh, I don't want to get a flu shot." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I haven't had a flu shot for, a million years. I don't know. Oh, I don't know when the last one was when I was a teenager. I don't know." And she's like, "What? How come?" I said, "This is not good for us." Really? Everyone's supposed to do it. And I'm like, So stuff like that. You just use your brain a little bit um, and your heart and the spirit. Okay, so claims. Oh, sorry. Popular doesn't mean right. Yeah, and there's our scriptures. Begging the question or circular reasoning, using a claim as its own proof. Okay, so um, it's good because it's good. Like, why? Because it's good. I'm like, no, 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 there can claims need to have real support. What evidence do you have to say that it is good? Right? You know, people watching this might hate me now, but I've some people say, well, Trump is the worst dictator in the world. I'm like, but why? because it's the worst. It's worse than Stalin and Hitler. And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Why? They have no reason. They're just following rhetoric or get your vaccines in. Vaccines are good. Why? Because vaccines are good. And I'm like, can you
Mm.
tell me why? They don't have a good reason. So when it's the logical fallacy like that, I have taught my kids to question and to not buy it. I told them they can filter through everything that their teacher says. So one of my daughters, she wants to be a doctor. She went um, Maryland. Is it Maryland that we went to a camp for a whole week with other students who want to be studying medicine as well, who wants to be future doctors. And so they had this big youth conference and they talked about health and they talked about medicine and they got the kids to, suture and they, just everything. And then they had a big lecture on vaccines. And my daughter came back and she said it was all rhetoric. There's good, good, good people who don't believe it. Bad, bad, bad. Good, 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 good. And she did not see any evidence, hardcore evidence, backing what they have to say. She felt like it was all propaganda. And so she's like, but then she learned to filter. She didn't, get sucked in. And she was only 15, and she was able to reason. That, that, as a mum, I felt so happy, so proud. Okay, that's what we want. Okay, black and white. So we say there's only two options, this option and this option. That's all. But there's other options. There could be other options, but we're not, you know, bringing those up. Okay, so that is a logical fallacy. We look for all the possibilities. Sometimes there are just two options, right? Right? If there's God and then Satan, right? You can't be fence sitting. But there sometimes some things, some other things, there are more than options, right? And so we have to ask the question, is this all the options? Are these all, the options that we have? That's all. Okay, just using our intelligence a little bit and, you know, just thinking.
Jade,
Yep.
Jade, sorry, what's your quote about the fence sitting again? I love
Um,
it. You have
oh,
a quote.
yeah. It's Satan owns the fence.
I love it. I love it. I have
Yeah.
to write it down.
That's right. Yeah. So we can't you either on one side or the other. You do not sit on the fence because Satan owns the fence. Okay.
But
Not the safest place. And we have that down here too, similar. Okay. So black and white, that's the logical fallacy. Not everything is black and white. There are some grays as well. So sometimes when I teach people about faith, and I say, hey, we need to release this fear and have more of this faith, emotion, or whatever. They feel offended. They're like, I have faith. How dare you say I don't have faith? And it's not a black and white situation. It's like more faith. We might be in the gray. We might say, yeah, I've got lots of faith, but I've got some fears here too, right? So there's so many, there's a spectrum, there's a range, but when they have this black and white fallacy, this mentality, that's how they can, easily get offended, right? So there's just things that have more spectrum to consider. So the next one is burden of proof. That's expecting others to disprove your claim. So you make a claim and then you just say, hey, you make you make you find the evidence. So, for example, if a child says, "Well, church is not true," and then you're like, "Really?" And then they're like, "Prove it. If you can prove it, I'll go back to church." Right? So you're like, "Wait a minute. You made the claim that church is not true. You find out whether it is true or not. It's not mummy's job. Oils are not true. Oils don't work. Give me evidence." And yeah, no, no, you find the evidence. You've made a claim. Your job. right? Because it's your belief, right? But sometimes
Mm.
people don't realize that they do that. They say you've got the burden of proof, and you're like, no, 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 no. You made the claim. That's your burden. That's your responsibility. Yep. Okay. So like card stacking or cherry picking. So that's like someone's, presenting just one side of the story, one set of facts, and then making that claim is true. And that's all, right? And hiding the other side. And this is really good to know because some wives do this as well. I mean, kids do that as well. Like, oh, I got a certificate today, but really you went into detention. The teacher, yeah, but you got a certificate from the other day, right? And then you just tell the mum the only good thing, right? And you cover up the other negative things. But like some of my experiences with my friends as I do sessions, sometimes they like present something with their husbands and they're like, well, we should this. And so they all like list out all the good stuff and then expect the husband to buy into it. Instead of like reasoning and saying, babes, I know you think this, and we have this other thing too, but if you could consider this other side as well. So give both side of the argument, be unattached, and let them decide whether which way they want to go, so they don't feel manipulated. Okay. And most of the time, when you give people both sides to the story, they are more likely to, you know, veer over to your side, the way, the side that you choose, because you're kindly presenting it in an unattached and unconditional way. Okay, so that's a lot healthier in relationships, because otherwise we just keep on manipulating each other. Okay. So the Lord does that a lot for us. He's like, well, here are your choices. But if you choose this, these are the negative consequences. And if you choose this, these are the blessings. But up to you, up to you. Okay. And then we go, well, of course, I'm going to choose this. But it's thank you for helping me think it through. Okay. So we want to show the full picture. Okay. To be more trustworthy. Okay. Okay. Fallacy. It's dismissing a point because it's argued poorly. So and so stutters. So and so doesn't speak English well. So and so is not articulate. So therefore, everything and anything they say is not good. It's not right. Yeah. So even weak arguments may contain some truth in there. That's the logical truth. Okay. Gambler's fallacy is thinking past events affect the future random outcomes. Yeah. Um, uh, well, because God hasn't answered me in the past, He's not going to ever answer me ever, ever, ever. Right? So they just because all of these things, then the chances of it happening later on is this way. Or um, I um, I wore pink socks today, and I was able to um, no, no, not pink socks. Um, I had 2 bad days, so therefore I'm going to have a good day tomorrow. That's the gambler's fallacy. Okay. Middle ground is the next fallacy, is believing the truth lies in between two extremes. Okay. So that's like the fence kind of thing. When when a child tries to do this, they'll say something like, um, well, I don't want to go to, I want to go to bed at 10. Mom says, oh no, you need to go to bed at 8. And then you're like, that's fine. I'll go to bed at 9. Because I think the middle ground is the best. Yeah. Or so and so said this is healthy food, and so and so said this is unhealthy food. Well, I might as well eat a little bit of it because that means it's a little bit unhealthy, you know? And it's like maybe it doesn't make sense that way, but that's how they reason. Um, okay. So the truth isn't always in the middle. That's the fallacy, right? Um, so that's the truth from of that fallacy. Moving the goalpost is changing the requirements after they're met. So that's pretty obvious. Well, you've done this, but then you also need to do this, and then just it's not ever enough. So that's, we need to be consistent and fair. Personal incredulity is dismissing something because you don't understand it. Um, tithing. Tithing isn't important because um, I don't know why a rich church would want my money, something like that. That's just doesn't make sense, but people use that. Just because you lack understanding doesn't mean things are false. Okay. Um, Slippery slope, saying one small step leads to a disaster. So look for evidence, not the fear. So basically, exaggerating. Straw man is misrepresenting an argument to make it easier to attack, like twisting the truth, um, responding to what was actually said. So instead of saying, well, I bet you meant this, therefore, you know, this negative. And the last one is tu quoque. It's you too, right? Rejecting a point because the speaker is hypocritical. Well, you are a sinner, therefore, what you tell me, it doesn't, it's not going to be valuable, right? So that's just like judging the idea. Instead of we need to judge the idea instead of the person. Okay, that's just being judgmental. You too, you're bad too. So don't tell me to be good. Okay. So what do you guys think?
I think that's amazing. It's so detailed. How long did that take you, Jade? There's so much good information that, oh my God.
Well, we talked about this for
Mm.
a few years, but it took like a while for me to just sit down and go, look, I need to make this simpler for people to
Yeah,
understand. And then the thing is, you need to see examples and you need to kind of see it in your life because you can't learn
yeah,
time. So I'll move on here and I'll show you what it looks like.
no,
Okay.
I
So
love that.
we just go
yeah,
to ad hominem. This is such a tongue twister for me.
yeah,
It's like human, right? So attacking the
Yeah.
person instead of the argument.
To the
They,
person, Latin.
yeah, to the person. They may attack the speaker's appearance, their past mistakes, their personality, or background. Just something about that person and just kind of like distracted from the actual argument. The kids say, Tom says we should clean the room. And Sam replies, oh, sorry, just
Yeah.
Sam replies, well, you're messy. Okay. So, like, what does it have to do with cleaning the room? Right. Okay. And that's how they kind of get out of it. And it just doesn't make sense. Or you're wrong because you're always mean. Or I don't want to go to church because Brother Smith is always grumpy. You've said
mm,
before, so you can't talk about faith. You're not a good person, so your opinion is wrong. Okay, all of these attack the people, not actually the argument, not talking about the argument, just being logical and sensible. Okay. The adult side, don't listen to her argument about recycling. She's been fined for littering. Or you can't trust her opinion on faith. She doesn't even go to church. There's some beautiful people that don't go to church and they have, great faith. We can't just assume. It might be true, but it might not be. Of course, he's against the vaccine. He's a conspiracy theorist who thinks that the earth is flat. You can't trust anything he says. Just like bashing the person And like, we're not even talking about vaccines here. Tell me about it, you know? So we see that a lot, but then people use that argument over and over. And you look at social media or you look at the news and you're like, can anybody see this? Can anybody recognize this? Is anybody, are you listening? Right? Guys, what kind of argument is this? I know nothing about
I
health.
don't think,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they want to. I think part of it is a bit of this late. They're too, I don't want us to use the word lazy to label, generally speaking, but I think they just choose to bury their heads underneath the carpet. It's all too hard, right? So, purpose of social media coming at them and them consuming, they don't have the real estate in their headspace to step outside and choose to think for themselves with agency.
Yep.
So they're so conditioned that it's just they feel it's like instant gratification. It's easier to avoid the truth temporarily, but not realizing the impacts long term.
Yeah,
So I don't know how this is why this is so important for people to read it and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, and keep it really simple, because then somehow they'll remember it. But I don't know if, yeah, they're choosing not to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like,
in our church, we call it the natural man, the human side of us. We get sucked into fear. We get
yeah,
sucked to anger.
yeah,
So the media sells things through fear and anger. Can't speak today. So, if people are angry and they've got this fire happening, they want to pull you in and join this party, right? And just be angry together, right?
yeah,
Or fear, and we're fearing together, right? They don't value reasoning. They don't value
yeah.
intelligence, and all these virtues, because that's not the point of this whole thing. Like
Mm,
they're at an elementary education level. They're arguing, at this childish level, because that's their
mm,
value, and that's all. So usually, like, oh, they don't want to. They don't. I don't even know if they know that they don't want to. It's just, oh,
mm,
someone's angry. Let's be angry together. You know?
yeah,
Yeah, someone's fearful. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be fearful too. That's
yeah.
okay, Kayla.
Yeah, so I am, in case you don't know, I am a student studying intercultural peace building and political science. Those are my two majors. And both of them right now are talking about things that relate to this. In my peace building class, we're learning about cognitive dissonance and um, self-betrayal and self-deception and justifications. And in my political science class, it talks about the ways different people like argue and use power over each other and get their ideas across and things like that. And I'm just like when, especially going to the idea of like self-deception, that is your biggest obstacle. No matter what belief you have, that is the first biggest obstacle that you need to overcome because you cannot overcome a false belief if you refuse to admit that you have a false belief, if you
Mm,
refuse to admit that there is a fallacy in your thinking, if you refuse to admit that there is something not in line, that there's a dissonance there. Dissonance is like uh the inconsistency between your beliefs and values and how you're acting or how you're thinking.
Mhm.
And so this self-deception is self-perpetuating. Like if you understand anything about self-deception, it's you locking yourself into a thought frame and you're sticking to it because anytime you go out of it, it's like and no, anytime you see any evidence that you might be wrong, you reject it full right. You're just like, because it's uncomfortable. It's you don't want to face the fact that you might be wrong.
Mhm.
There's a quote from this book that we have to read. It's called Dangerous Love, and it says, "When we feel that dissonance coming, will take whatever justification is easiest for us to get hold of. And I think that all these logical fallacies are justifications. Like, I'm not listening to that person because I don't trust that he knows what he's talking about. Or I'm not going to agree with that because you also think that this and this and this is true.
Mhm.
Or whatever reason that we're talking about. Like the ad hominem, like I don't um agree with you because you are a really horrible, rude person. But and all that comes from pride.
Mhm.
The more and more you humble yourself, the more and more that you reach out to God, and more that you open yourself out, that whole like open-hearted and surrendering will, that is the key to dealing, like first opening up yourself to be like, hey, I have been in this self-deception. I need to move on. And I'm going on a tangent,
No,
but
no,
you know what I'm
you're
saying?
right. I get what you're saying, Michaela. I love it because, sometimes how does God help the people that have that dissonance, right? There that lack of alignment or awareness. So we have the literal language of the body, okay? And that's amazing. I talked to a lady and she had a big, cyst that she had to cut out of her body, but she says, this is an evidence of somebody that has just such great faith. She said to me, I cut this negative um, thinking out of my life. Right. And I'm like, that's beautiful because your body doesn't lie. Your body's telling you there's stuff. And
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
said she cut a lot of these rubbish out of her life.
Mhm.
And she said she viewed it differently, okay, than most people. So, anyways, the other thing too, Michaela says that when you kind of betray or ignore all these things, what do you call it when you um, I don't know. Uh, but anyways, you have that six fundamental human needs. And when you don't feel loved, important, and all of these things, even if people, present reason to you, you will, go against it because these needs are not met. That's why
Mm,
when you have faith in God and connect to God, all those needs are met. And then, you're unattached and you're r- reasonable to reason. You're able to reason. You're able to look at things in a unattached way, objectively, to yeah, to move forward because you just want progression now because these needs are already satisfied. And so I get that people have that deception, but the Lord has the literal language of the body to say, hello, it's here, in case you didn't notice this about yourself, right? And then, by the way, make sure your six fundamental human needs are met. And now that you've got that down, let's reason a little bit. Does that make sense?
mm, yeah.
We will betray ourselves and our values to get that fundamental human needs met, even though some people, it pierces them to the heart and you go, well, that doesn't make sense. Right. Like when I said, look, I'm on the beach. Who am I going to catch it from? Or who am I going to give it to? Right. It doesn't make sense, even though it pierces them and they know truth. But for some reason, those people, their fundamental human needs are not met, and therefore they
Mm,
shut every reasoning power down. They don't have, that ability to accept logic. Yeah. So Rebecca, going back to what we were saying, the people just want to jump on board because if I'm jumping on board, I'm part of this whole. I feel a little bit more important and accepted because now,
mm,
I'm part of the trend. But then
mm,
when people who have this connection to God, they're like, I don't need to be part of any trend. I've got God. I'm good. Yeah. And that's how we can protect our children. That's good. Good discussions,
mm.
guys. Yeah. So I'll just go through this and then I think we'll finish with this because we're running out of time. We've got gospel principles to judge fairly with compassion. We've got John 7:24, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. And there are people who are so afraid of judging, right? Because they're like, oh, well, I'm not a judgmental person, therefore I don't judge. And I'm like, no, no, you do need to judge righteously because if something is bad, it's bad. You need to kind of use your mind, reason a little bit and go, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to choose to be on this side of that fence.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's not like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm judgmental, so I'm not going to think. Yeah. And I've had those people go, no, 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 I don't, it doesn't matter. Anyone can do anything they want to do. I'm like, yeah, people are free. I get that. But you know what? We need to declare and make a stand. Declare where we are and make a stand. Yeah. So, like my daughter, she's like, I felt like the only one there that did not agree. But I'm not going to put my hand up and expose myself to ridicule, but I still don't agree. Okay, so don't judge the truth of a message based on the person's flaws. Instead, listen to the spiritual maturity. Listen with spiritual maturity and fairness. It teaches that truth must be judged by its righteousness, not by our opinion of the person sharing it. Matthew 7:1, judge not that you be not judged. It's kind of the same, right? If we judge unrighteousness, right, unrighteously, don't give people the benefit of the doubt, then people will do that to you. And then you'll be constantly worried about what other people think of you. And we don't need to be that insecure. Matthew 18:7, woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. The scripture warns us not to be the cause of spiritual stumbling, okay, especially through personal attacks or offense. The ad hominem fallacy is one way we offend unrighteously. Okay, it's unkind, unfair, and it often leads others away from truth. I think it's I've had people attack me in lots of ad hominem ways. Um, and you think that that's really unfair, but the thing is, it destroys relationships. And I'm like, I still forgive that person. That's fine. Um, but you're like, yeah, our relationship is no good anymore. Yeah, yeah. But I don't choose to take offense, but some people do. And then they lose each other's friendships. Okay. So I've got Proverbs 18:13. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and shame unto him. Here's another one, Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the heavens, and sorry, unto the hearers. Sorry, I was thinking, um, there's a nasty culture out there, and I notice that more in Australians, but maybe I'm just being biased here. It's just like teasing and cutting people down as a way
Mm.
of joking, And so where there is an opportunity to praise and encourage, they don't take that because it's not cool, right?
Yeah.
They like to cut people down and tease. So they'll find some features or something about you, and they tease and they
Mm.
laugh. And I'm like, can we just change that culture? Even though it may feel like at first it seems like harmless and they're just joking and take a joke already, don't take things too seriously. But after a while, the subconscious will believe it. It's not healthy. Yeah, so when you have an opportunity to praise and to encourage, do so. Otherwise, just don't do that criticism because that's basically what it is. and can't be different.
Mm.
You know, let it be different. That tall poppy syndrome. So unhealthy. So when the kids moved back to Australia, I kind of told them this is the kind of culture you can expect, you know, and they did. They faced all of that. But I taught them the principles to kind of overcome that. I said these people don't know better, and that's what they're exposed to as a culture, and they will perpetuate this. But you don't have to. You can continue to praise and thank, you know, and these girls have done that. Just like thanking a teacher for um, teaching that day. And they've had several teachers go, whoa, no one's ever said that before. And one teacher's like, I don't know why, I'm just sharing with you everything. I'm just, you know, telling you my life story, you know, and you're just a teenager. Because she felt like they have this maturity. Okay. So I just have two more examples and then we can be done here for the day. Um, so examples of, you know, attacking the person, the human. In the Book of Mormon, Nephi and his brothers. Um, he's got Nephi is this prophet, and he's got two older brothers. Well, three older brothers, and the two oldest, they're kind of whiners. They just whinge all the time, and so Nephi is the younger brother, and he's like trying to tell his brothers, "Come on, let's be good, man. You know, stop whinging and stop complaining about everyone and everything." And they try to, you know, these two older brothers try to kill their dad as well because he's a prophet. So, anyways, they're telling Nephi, "Thou hast declared unto us hard things, more than we can bear." Okay, it's just like you speak too harshly, like just criticizing Nephi instead of like listening to the advice and the principles that Nephi is telling them. You know, come on, brothers, like, can we just be obedient to God? You know, and
Mm.
the brother's like, you suck, right? It's like, hey, we're not talking about me. Just kind of listen. So that's an example in the scriptures, right? So you're like, you're too harsh, therefore you're wrong, kind of thing. So yeah, when we read it, we can say, well, that's just silly, right? These guys, Layman and Lemuel, they should have listened and, you know, listened to exactly the principles and the teachings that God is teaching them through their younger brother. Right? Don't get distracted by who he is and your own
Mm.
jealousy. But like I think that somehow they haven't attached or connected to God enough to fulfill their fundamental human needs, and therefore they keep on deceiving themselves, right? And you know, getting onto that drama ban. And then another example of ad hominem is this guy. He's an antichrist, and his name is Corey Hall. And he says, "You say that this people is a free people. Behold, I say unto you, I say, they are in bondage. You say this people is a guilty and a fallen people." You know, so he's like, you know, pointing his finger and saying, you know, what you're saying, you know, it's like you're saying bad things. You know, therefore it doesn't work. And like he's just attacking the leaders instead of addressing the
Mm.
gospel truth. Like, you know, you can ask, hey, tell me why do you think these people, you know, because they think if these people are obedient to God, they're in bondage. But like, explain how you see that, or explain how they're not in bondage. You can ask those questions instead of just picking on the leaders and just playing that, you know, character assassination.
Mm.
Doesn't make sense. So you're like telling the prophets they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad. But why? Just listen to what they're teaching, break it up, principle at a time, and see if it makes sense. See if you agree. That's all. That's the logical way of approaching this. But instead, these guys, and then, you know, they don't have a good ending. So, anyways, so there you
Mm.
have it, guys. So I hope that was helpful. We'll continue to do more logical reasoning and fallacies, addressing fallacies next week. So I'll stop the recording and we can have a chat.